Okay, so I think we all agreed this was the keynote that should have happened yesterday.
With the
Okay.
exception of the demo, yes.
I think this deal did a much better job of explaining the story behind the autonomous enterprise and so forth. He finally brought together the workflow component to this new stuff around the AI and the agentic stuff and the fabric and and the blueprint. It really needed some connection, and I didn't think we got that yesterday. I think we got a better view of it today. He waited till the very last minute and he mentioned getting rid of legacy technical debt. And to me, that would have been a big point to pound home on when they were talking about Blueprint. A way, way better keynote today than yesterday's. No question about that. I don't think the Verizon talk or the Rabobank talk were as good as they should have been. But anyway.
I mean, I would echo Brian's comments. We talk about legacy systems, but there's also heritage in those systems. It's almost like IP that's been built up over kind of like years, and how you can take that and then make it visible and then improve on it and use the technology to do that. And then I saw and Brian, you also mentioned the legacy debt. They just released a piece of research which talks about legacy kind of debt. I think the story started to come out, but I didn't think it came out as didn't speak to the reality as much as it could, and combine the reality with actually here's the promise of the future, and here's how you can get there. But I think you can tease it out if you're paying attention. But I think it was kind of hard. The storytelling was hard to parse.
I agree with Brian and Adrian, and I would say too, it doesn't matter if the story's hard to parse or not. What matters is what their champion goes home with, that they can communicate to the rest of the organization, and without giving them, which is typically a pretty technical audience, that sort of high level non-tech, here's what you get in kind of non-technical parlance. I think they did themselves a disservice, because all of their champions need to go back and explain to the line of business folks why we're doing this with Pega, why it's better, and not about orchestration or fabric, but about sort of here's what we're going to get in terms of, to Brian's point, savings on technical debt, to Adrian's point, rationalization of systems, all those things.
If I'm looking at the 2 days, I would have organized it, to everyone's point, a lot differently. I mean, Alan first, Don second, et cetera, and also organize it so it was some sort of evolutionary theme there. The only thing that was consistent throughout the entire conference was Blueprint's really good. I thought Don kind of saved the whole thing on the bigger picture. And again, to your point, Rebecca, about the demo, if Don were second, that's a valuable demo, right? But not if he's last. We already saw 5 of those. Unfortunately, there wasn't a single customer that I would say, okay, well, that was very good or helpful.
I think your customers weren't speaking in their own language, which just made it all that more kind of stilted,
Exactly. But on the whole, I'm still frustrated, I guess, because there was so much siloed disconnection. It's like, okay, there was this vignette and that vignette and that vignette and that vignette, but there was nothing particularly related about it except Blueprint's great. I really like this company, and I've liked them for a long time. And I always have found the one thing they did exceptionally well was corporate narratives. And this literally was not a very good version of that.
Today was the blockbuster. It was explainable and digestible. Blueprints is the star, but work and workflows as being a totally human artifice is a message they need to lean in on.
To her point, I'd say Don was the blockbuster.
As Don was going through his, he could see each of us like, they do this yet? Why was this yesterday? And it slotted right after Alan. The combination of Alan and Don is one that over the years has just been a great one. Remember when Don used to be like the MC of this thing?
Yeah.
If you had Don's explanation of the demo that like right next week, that demo would have really hit home a lot harder than I think it did. I think vendors, generally speaking, need to help the customers, because like Rebecca said, if they each get up there and just kind of talk in their own language, it doesn't help the audience here to understand how all these 4 customer conversations come together. And and this is not just about Pega. This has happened a number of times on a number of these conferences. I think you need to make sure that there's somebody there that kind of orchestrates the customer conversation parts of these sessions so that they do all have a fit. And even though they're saying things almost sort of like the drummers, I mean, the drummers sound good on their own, but as a group, there needs to be some orchestration, some guidance. And I think that would have helped tremendously.
I don't know if these customers were over-guided or under-guided, Brent.
Either way.
You know, what's ironic is that them using the analogy of the drummers and kind of playing to a score, and how if they could take that and it shows like, this is our score, they could have used that analogy on themselves. You know, having that MC, that conductor that holds it all together. Yeah, no, I think that would have helped.
What the overall theme, the messaging, the destination, the X marks the spot on where you want to take people might not have been clearly articulated to the speakers. And so they could only do what they know. And that was their kind of content or their message or their stump speech, whatever. So anyway, I'm not sure the customer is the one that deserves criticism here. This is about the way the show was constructed, and that's where it falls.
And I don't think anyone's blaming the customers themselves. I mean, I think reiterate, it's just what they presented is, I guess, to your point, Brian, the best they knew what to do.